In a stark reminder of the relentless conflict, Ukraine's capital Kyiv endured a harrowing 9-hour aerial bombardment overnight, resulting in at least 19 fatalities in the city and one in Odessa, with dozens more injured across the nation. This horrific assault, described by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy as pure terrorism, saw Russia unleash an estimated 472 drones and missiles, marking the fourth largest attack of the war to date. The timing of this devastating offensive, as noted by Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha, was strategically calculated to coincide with the G7 summit in Canada, aiming to make the G7 leaders appear weak. Against this backdrop of escalating violence, international diplomacy remains fraught with tension and divergent perspectives. The G7 nations, including the UK, are moving to impose further sanctions on Moscow. The UK, for its part, has announced a new raft of measures targeting 4 individuals, 6 entities, and 20 ships, including oil tankers and suppliers of electronics, building upon the over 2,300 sanctions already in place since the 2022 invasion. Sir Keir Starmer, a prominent political figure, articulated the collective goal, stating, "I want to work with all of our G7 partners to squeeze Russia's energy revenues and reduce the funds they are able to pour into their illegal war." Adding a contentious layer to the geopolitical discourse, the Kremlin has openly endorsed former U.S. President Donald Trump's assertion that Russia's expulsion from the G8 in 2014 was a big mistake. Trump posited that had Vladimir Putin not been kicked out, Russia might not have invaded Ukraine. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov echoed this sentiment, adding that the current G7 group has lost practical significance and looks pretty useless. This alignment comes as the Trump administration reportedly disbanded a group dedicated to pressuring Russia into accelerating peace talks, signaling a potential shift in the U.S. approach to Moscow. Despite 2 rounds of direct negotiations in Istanbul, peace talks between Russia and Ukraine have yielded little beyond prisoner exchanges, with both sides maintaining incompatible positions on territorial concessions and sovereignty. Meanwhile, military analysts are observing significant tactical adaptations on the battlefield. A recent assessment by the Institute for the Study of War (ISW) indicates a slowdown in Russia's consumption of its Soviet-era tank reserves. Satellite imagery analysis suggests that Russia may exhaust its remaining tank and armored vehicle reserves by late 2025, but a more immediate trend is the increasing use of unarmored civilian vehicles, specifically motorcycles and all-terrain vehicles (ATVs), by Russian forces since late 2024. This tactical shift is seen as a direct response to the pervasive and highly effective Ukrainian drone strikes that have rendered large slow-moving armored vehicles highly vulnerable, leading to unsustainable losses. While these faster, lighter vehicles enable Russian forces to make marginal tactical gains in contested gray zones, they come at the cost of significant infantry casualties. Beyond the immediate conflict, Russia continues to develop its long-term strategic capabilities. Satellite imagery from May 2025 reveals that Russia is actively developing and upgrading at least 5 nuclear facilities across western Russia and Belarus, including new test sites, loading keys, and communications infrastructure. This sustained investment in nuclear capabilities, as confirmed by Swedish Defense Minister Pål Jonson, underscores Russia's intent to pose a long-term strategic threat to the United States and its Western allies, irrespective of the conflict's resolution in Ukraine. In the information domain, Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service (SCRU) has warned that the Kremlin is actively spreading narratives designed to sow panic and discredit Ukraine, particularly concerning prisoner of war (POW) and killed in action Kyiv body exchanges. This campaign, leveraging pro-Kremlin and pro-Russian media sources, aims to manipulate data and portray delays as deliberate Ukrainian actions, aligning with previous ISW assessments of similar Russian destabilization efforts. In a related development, while Ukraine and Russia have conducted exchanges of fallen soldiers, with Ukraine receiving 1245 bodies recently, Ukrainian President Zelenskyy highlighted a disturbing proposal from Russia to exchange kidnapped Ukrainian children held in Russia for Russian POWs, a move he emphasized is beyond international law. As the conflict enters its 1,209th day, the intensified Russian bombardments, the ongoing diplomatic impasse, and the evolving military tactics paint a picture of a deeply entrenched and complex war. The G7's resolve to increase economic pressure, coupled with NATO's upcoming summit focusing on defense spending, signals a continued international commitment to supporting Ukraine. However, Russia's strategic adaptations and long-term military investments suggest that the path to a lasting resolution remains fraught with significant challenges demanding sustained vigilance and coordinated international responses. The digital age has fundamentally reshaped the global security landscape, with recent events underscoring a profound shift in military strategy where precision and synergy now often outweigh sheer power. The human cost of this evolving warfare remains stark, as tragically demonstrated by the recent Russian drone and missile attack on Ukraine on June 17, 2025, which claimed the lives of 15 people and injured 116, according to the Tribune Democrat. This devastating incident is but one grim reminder of how unmanned and guided weapon systems have become central to modern conflict, blurring traditional lines of engagement and demanding a re-evaluation of defense doctrines worldwide. The ongoing Russo-Ukrainian war, now in its 1,209th day, continues to ripple far beyond the battlefield, compelling nations to confront long-standing dependencies and forge new strategic pathways. Europe, for instance, faces a monumental challenge in decoupling from Russian energy. Euromaidan Press reported on June 16, 2025, that the European Union is staring down a massive $278 billion bill to break free from Russian nuclear dependency by the 2030s. This colossal investment highlights the far-reaching economic and geopolitical consequences of the conflict, illustrating how military actions necessitate costly and complex long-term strategic realignments. Yet perhaps the most insightful glimpse into the future of warfare comes not from the sheer scale of destruction but from the calculated precision of recent operations. Israel's multifaceted drone missile operation against Iran, detailed by Defense Security Monitor on June 16, 2025, serves as a compelling case study. This complex attack, which reportedly targeted personnel including military leaders and nuclear scientists, as well as military bases, defense plants, weapons depots, and nuclear weapons research facilities, was not about deploying a single best weapon system. Instead, it showcased a sophisticated orchestration of diverse tools. Larry Dickerson, a senior defense analyst at Forecast International, observed, "Future war is about the right tool, not the best." The Israeli operation reportedly involved hundreds, perhaps thousands, of inexpensive small drones launched from scattered sites within Iran, alongside dozens of airstrikes by combat aircraft launching sophisticated long-range missiles from outside Iranian airspace. This tandem approach allowed drones to strike high-value personnel targets with reduced risk, while missiles with their destructive power targeted hardened facilities like Iran's uranium enrichment facility at Natanz, some 1,500 kilometers away, parts of which are located underground. Dickerson emphasized that neither system was inherently superior, rather their combined deployment was crucial for mission success, demonstrating that Israel's attack could not have succeeded without both inexpensive small drones and sophisticated and costly missiles working in tandem. This evolving threat landscape also exposes vulnerabilities in even the most advanced military arsenals. Real Clear Defense noted on June 16, 2025, that Ukraine's drone attacks have spotlighted the vulnerability of U.S. bombers, underscoring how relatively inexpensive and accessible technologies can pose significant threats to high-value traditional military assets. This forces a re-evaluation of air defense strategies and the survivability of platforms designed for a different era of combat. The convergence of these trends paints a clear picture. Modern warfare is increasingly characterized by adaptability, technological integration, and a nuanced understanding of weapon utility. The focus is shifting from singular dominant platforms to networked multi-domain operations. As Larry Dickerson posits, the future could see long-range missiles carrying warheads containing multiple drones, dispersing them to seek out individual targets with remote operator assistance. Further down the line, infantry could be equipped with micro-drones for enhanced situational awareness and advanced weaponry featuring IFF electronics and guidance systems, all integrated with robotic exoskeletons. This continuous evolution means that military strategies must remain dynamic, constantly adapting to leverage new technological synergies and mitigate emerging threats, ensuring that the relentless march of innovation continues to redefine the very nature of conflict. The global geopolitical landscape is once again gripped by a confluence of escalating conflict, shifting alliances, and contentious diplomacy, highlighted by a devastating new wave of attacks on Ukraine and a deeply polarizing G7 summit. As Kyiv reeled from what President Volodymyr Zelenskyy decried as pure terrorism, the focus of international attention simultaneously pivoted to Canada, where G7 leaders grappled with a fractured consensus, particularly concerning the war in Ukraine and the role of Russia. In the early hours of Tuesday, Kyiv endured one of the most horrific assaults of the war, with Russian forces unleashing nearly 500 drones and missiles across Ukraine. This massive overnight bombardment, one of Moscow's largest since the full-scale invasion in February 2022, claimed at least 15 lives and injured 116, with 14 fatalities reported in Kyiv and 1 in Odessa. Ukrainian officials warned that the casualty toll could still rise as rescue efforts continued to sift through the rubble of destroyed residential buildings. Such attacks are pure terrorism, President Zelenskyy stated, emphatically calling for the entire world, including the United States and Europe, to finally respond as a civilized society responds to terrorists. The sheer scale of the attack underscores Russia's continued intent to inflict widespread damage and terror, even as global leaders convened to discuss the conflict. The timing of this brutal assault coincided jarringly with the G7 summit, where former U.S. President Donald Trump made headlines by renewing his controversial embrace of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Just hours after the devastating attacks, Mr. Trump publicly declared it a big mistake to have expelled Russia from the G8 in 2014 following its annexation of Crimea, suggesting that its continued inclusion might have averted the 2022 invasion. "Putin speaks to me. He doesn't speak to anybody else. He's not a happy person about it," Mr. Trump asserted, doubling down on a long-held view that has consistently put him at odds with traditional American allies. His remarks, delivered at the outset of the G7 gathering, underscored a deep rift within the alliance and raised concerns about the future of Western unity against Russian aggression. John Bolton, Mr. Trump's former national security advisor, noted that the former president never seemed to understand that Russia had been kicked out of the G8 for invading Ukraine, highlighting a perceived lack of grasp on the bloc's foundational principles. This dynamic, as Daniel M. Price, who worked on international trade, observed, suggests that G7 partners are likely to conclude that Trump may be more interested in rehabilitating Putin rather than joining the consensus supporting Ukraine, potentially creating a G6+1 dynamic. Indeed, the G7 summit struggled to present a united front. While British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and other European leaders signaled their intent to announce fresh sanctions packages against Russia, Mr. Trump appeared to downplay such measures. He questioned Europe's commitment to imposing further sanctions and highlighted the potential costs for the United States, indicating a reluctance to fully commit to a more confrontational stance. This hesitancy is further evidenced by claims from U.S. officials that a Trump administration interagency working group established earlier in the spring to pressure Russia into peace talks has effectively been shelved due to the president's disinterest in a more robust approach. The alleged dismissal of the White House National Security Council team dealing directly with the Ukraine war further signals a potential shift in U.S. policy. Beyond the immediate theater of conflict and high-level diplomacy, the ripple effects of the Ukraine war continue to reshape global dynamics. Ukraine itself is navigating internal political shifts, with the parliament appointing Ruslan Kravchenko as the new prosecutor general, a position vacant since October after a scandal involving officials allegedly abusing their positions to avoid military service. Meanwhile, Russia is solidifying its strategic partnerships with Sergei Shoigu, Head of Russia's Security Council announcing that North Korea will send 1,000 sappers and 5,000 military construction workers to Russia's Kursk region to aid reconstruction efforts following Ukrainian incursions. This signals a deepening military and economic collaboration between the two nations, potentially complicating international sanctions regimes. The conflict has also become a crucible for technological innovation in defense. Taiwan, facing its own significant military threats from China, has inked a partnership deal with Auterion, a US and German-based firm whose drone software has been combat-tested in Ukraine. This collaboration aims to bolster Taiwan's defenses by leveraging lessons learned from Kyiv's successful deployment of drones to offset Russia's numerical advantage. As Auterion's chief executive Lorenz Meyer noted, what we're bringing to the table has been combat-proven in Ukraine to deter aggression and destroy tanks' naval assets and other really expensive equipment. This move underscores how the lessons of modern warfare are rapidly being disseminated and adapted globally. Economically, Europe continues its arduous journey towards energy independence from Russia. The European Commission is reportedly preparing a proposal for a ban on EU imports of Russian gas and liquefied natural gas (LNG) by the end of 2027. This ambitious plan seeks to use legal measures to bypass potential vetoes from countries like Hungary and Slovakia, which have resisted energy sanctions. While Russian gas imports have significantly decreased since 2022, around 19% still flow into Europe, highlighting the challenge of a complete severance. The proposed measures aim to provide legal grounds for companies to invoke force majeure to break existing contracts, signaling a long-term commitment to reshaping Europe's energy landscape. Amidst these complex developments, Mr. Trump's foreign policy purview extended beyond Ukraine. He called for an evacuation of Tehran, hinting at a real end to the Israel-Iran conflict rather than a mere ceasefire, and even suggested that Mr. Putin could serve as a mediator in the Middle East. This further illustrates his unique approach to international relations, which prioritizes direct engagement with leaders like Putin even as it creates friction with traditional allies. The current global climate is thus defined by a stark contrast: the brutal realities of an ongoing war in Ukraine marked by devastating civilian casualties set against a backdrop of high-stakes diplomatic maneuvering and a deepening ideological chasm among powerful nations. As Ukraine fights for its sovereignty, the international community grapples with internal divisions, the shifting nature of global alliances, and the profound economic and technological ramifications of protracted conflict. The path forward remains fraught with uncertainty, demanding careful navigation of geopolitical fault lines and a vigilant eye on the evolving dynamics of modern warfare and diplomacy. As the conflict in Ukraine enters its fourth year, a recent surge in Russian aerial bombardments has cast a grim shadow over diplomatic efforts, with Kyiv facing what President Volodymyr Zelenskyy described as one of the most horrific attacks since the full-scale invasion began. This escalating violence comes amidst a whirlwind of high-stakes international diplomacy, highlighting the complex and often contradictory currents shaping the future of the war. In the early hours of Tuesday, June 17, Ukraine endured a massive onslaught, with Russian forces unleashing over 440 drones and 32 missiles across the nation. The capital Kyiv bore the brunt of the assault, with at least 27 locations hit and a 9-story residential building in the Solomyansky district partially leveled by a ballistic missile. The devastation was profound, claiming the lives of at least 15 people in Kyiv and Odessa and injuring nearly 100 more across multiple regions. Among the fatalities in Kyiv was a 62-year-old U.S. citizen killed by shrapnel, a stark reminder of the conflict's far-reaching impact. Interior Minister Igor Klimenko reported emergency services tirelessly working through the rubble, noting that 30 apartments were destroyed in one residential block alone. Zelenskyy vehemently condemned these actions, labeling them pure terrorism and questioning why the powerful of this world turn a blind eye to it. This renewed intensity of strikes occurred just as President Zelenskyy embarked on a critical diplomatic tour aimed at shoring up international support. On Monday, he made his first visit to neutral Austria since the February 2022 invasion, securing pledges of non-military assistance. While Austria, famously neutral since 1955, maintains a stance against providing military aid. Its president Alexander van der Bellen underscored that his country was, by no means, politically neutral and firmly sided with Ukraine. Discussions in Vienna led to agreements on crucial non-military issues such as demining, energy and cybersecurity, reflecting Austria's commitment to supporting Ukraine through humanitarian aid and European Union sanctions against Moscow. This nuanced position aligns with Austria's post-World War II history of seeking a mediating role between East and West, though it has drawn criticism for maintaining ties with Russia even amid the ongoing conflict. Following his stop in Vienna, Zelenskyy was set to attend the G7 summit in Canada, where he intended to press for tighter sanctions against Russia and further military aid for Ukraine. A key item on his agenda was a planned meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump to discuss a potential defense package Ukraine was prepared to purchase. However, Trump's unexpected early departure from the summit on Monday night, attributed to escalating tensions in the Middle East, cast a shadow over these anticipated talks. Trump's stance on the conflict has been a source of considerable international speculation, as he has previously urged a ceasefire and signaled a reorientation of U.S. policy away from Kyiv, even controversially suggesting Russia's readmission to the G7. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha explicitly linked the timing of Russia's massive attack on Kyiv to the G7 summit, interpreting it as a direct signal of disrespect to the U.S. and its allies. Meanwhile, Russia's own diplomatic and logistical efforts continue to evolve in parallel. Russian Security Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu reportedly arrived in Pyongyang on Tuesday for a second visit in 3 months to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Russian state media indicated Shoigu was on a special mission from President Putin, following up on agreements from a prior June 4 visit. This underscores the deepening military cooperation between Moscow and Pyongyang, with North Korea reportedly supplying Russia with thousands of soldiers and significant shipments of military equipment, including artillery and ballistic missiles, in exchange for a mutual defense clause. Adding another disturbing layer to Russia's war machine, a new study has revealed allegations of exploitation within Russia's Alabuga Start program, where young women, predominantly from Africa, are purportedly recruited under false pretenses and then forced into manufacturing drones for the war effort in a special economic zone in Tatarstan. Amidst these developments, Ukraine continues to report staggering figures for Russian military casualties, estimating them at over 1 million in the 3-year-old war, while ongoing efforts to repatriate fallen soldiers' bodies continue, with both sides reporting differing figures on the numbers returned. As the world watches the unfolding events, Germany's foreign ministry reiterated its commitment to increase pressure on Russia, asserting that President Putin uses diplomacy merely as a facade and is not interested in a genuine solution to the conflict. The recent scale of attacks on Ukrainian cities, coupled with Russia's deepening alliances and alleged exploitative practices, paints a stark picture of a war that shows no immediate signs of abating. The coming weeks will undoubtedly test the resilience of international alliances and determine the extent to which diplomatic pressure can mitigate the escalating human cost of this protracted conflict, as Ukraine continues its desperate plea for sustained global support against what it perceives as unbridled aggression.